And CBS News Justice correspondent Scott MacFarlane joins us now for much more. Scott, what have we heard from the Justice Department so far about all of this?
This is going to shift from a federal investigation into a federal prosecution, potentially over the course of the weekend and into early next week. You'll get a criminal information, a charging document initially charging Tyler Robinson, potentially with multiple federal felonies. Then there's a preliminary hearing and a detention hearing where the Department of Justice will make an argument to the judge as to why they want Tyler Robinson held in pretrial detention pending trial in the case. That's almost certainly going to happen from the Department of Justice's purview. The investigation was both local and federal in nature. You had the state governor, you had state Department of Public Safety officers there, you had the federal investigators there, and the FBI too. So this was a multi-level, multi-layer investigation, so it's also possible there's some local charges filed here. Carter mentioned the 11,000 tips and the open-ended question whether any one of them was distinctively helpful in this case, or whether this simply was a person who confessed to a family member, who turned to a family friend, who turned to law enforcement. And though those questions weren't declaratively answered today, we could find out more when those court proceedings begin as early as Monday.
And Scott, I think it's safe to say there were some missteps with the FBI from the very beginning, especially when we have FBI Director Kash Patel, who took to social media and said, hey, we've arrested a suspect. That obviously turned out to not be the case. We know the Trump administration gutted much of the FBI. So how has that influenced these investigations, if it even has at all?
Well, it's led to criticism of the FBI director, who has been taking heat publicly and, of all places, on social media for the communication strategy used in the initial hours. The FBI director, who you heard from during the news conference, Kash Patel, had posted Wednesday night on social media that a subject was in custody for this shooting. Later, he had to post about 90 minutes later that that person had been released and was not connected to the shooting. But any of this happening on social media before law enforcement was to announce it in a more traditional setting, that's a change. And there's been criticism that if you announce somebody's in custody prematurely or incorrectly, you give a false sense of security to the public, which is a problem. Now, the president going on cable TV this morning to be the first to announce an arrest, that's untraditional as well, to put it mildly. Doesn't mean there's any issue there, but legal analysts immediately responded saying that is fodder for pretrial motions about jury pools, about defense strategy. All of that is a variable. We're not sure how that plays out because this is the first time that's ever happened.
Certainly is. Scott MacFarlane, thank you. Now, as we mentioned earlier, President Trump was the first to break the news of a suspect being in custody for the fatal shooting of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. You heard Scott talk about that. Here's a bit of what the president had to say.
I think with a high degree of certainty, we have him in custody, right? In custody. Everyone did a great job. We worked with the local police, the governor. Everybody did a great job. Well, I hope he's going to be found guilty, I would imagine, and I hope he gets the death penalty. What he did, Charlie Kirk was the finest person. He didn't deserve this.
CBS News correspondent Natalie is following all of this for us from the White House. Natalie, what else did the president say about this shooting?
Yeah, Mugo, he went into detail about what he knew about the investigation, the suspect being taken into custody before it was announced in that news conference. And that really speaks to the closeness of the relationship between the President of the United States and Charlie Kirk, who he really described as kind of a member of the family. He had a direct line to President Trump. He was a close ally, advisor, and friend, and that started years ago on the campaign trail. President Trump really crediting Kirk for helping to mobilize, turn out young conservative voters. And I just can't overstate just the grief that has overtaken the White House this week. And, you know, the president giving more details about when he learned about the shooting, and also confirming this morning that he will attend Kirk's funeral in Arizona.
And we know Kirk's casket was flown from Utah to Arizona just yesterday on Air Force Two. Can you talk to us about the significance of that moment?
Yeah, the Vice President, J.D. Vance, went to social media late Wednesday night and really detailed the closeness of the relationship and the friendship he had with Kirk. He credits Kirk for helping to launch his political career, for advocating for him to become Trump's running mate. So he personally flew to Salt Lake City yesterday, changing plans. He was supposed to be at a 9/11 remembrance and instead went to Salt Lake to meet Kirk's family, wife, and personally fly the casket from Utah to Arizona, where Kirk lived, where his political group Turning Point USA was headquartered, and where he will be laid to rest. The vice president reacting to the breaking news this morning on social media. I think you saw that social media post. He called this a big breakthrough, but also went on to say that in some ways the investigation is still in its early days, but I do believe we have the shooter in custody. And he ends by saying, say a prayer for Erica Kirk and those two beautiful babies. You know, everyone, really an outpouring of support and condolences to the wife and young children that Kirk leaves behind.
Natalie, I want to go back to that press conference really quickly. The governor of Utah talked about political violence. What did he have to say?
Yeah, and Governor Cox earlier this week, in the hours after the shooting, said the nation seems broken right now. And he really stressed that message again this morning after news was revealed about the arrest, saying that, you know, the very act that Charlie championed, freedom of expression, having his life taken in that very act makes it more difficult for people to feel like they can share ideas. Calling this an attack on all of us, you know, an attack on the ideals of democracy. And he compared this time to the late 60s, the political violence and turmoil of that period, and also had a message for younger people saying, you know, we are at a turning point here. Let's take a listen to what he had to say in his own words.
Right now, if I could, I need to talk to the young people in our state, in my state, and all across the country. As President Trump reminded me, he said, you know who really loved Charlie? The youths. And he's right. Young people loved Charlie, and young people hated Charlie. And Charlie went into those places anyway. And these are the words that have helped me. Charlie said, when people stop talking, that's when you get violence. He said, the weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is the attribute of the strong. The only way out of the labyrinth of suffering is to forgive. Welcome without judgment, love without condition, forgive without limit. He said, always forgive your enemies. Nothing annoys them so much. A few months ago, I referenced this last night, Charlie posted to social media, when things are moving very fast and people are losing their minds, it's important to stay grounded. Turn off your phone, read scripture, spend time with friends, and remember, internet fury is not real life. It's going to be okay. He again said, when you stop having a human connection with someone you disagree with, it becomes a lot easier to commit violence. He said, what we as a culture have to get back to is being able to have a reasonable agreement, where violence is not an option. Now, again, to my young friends out there, you are inheriting a country where politics feels like rage. It feels like rage is the only option. But through those words, we have a reminder that we can choose a different path. Your generation.
Governor going on to say that this is our moment. Do we escalate or find an off-ramp? And it comes, Mugo, as you know, we've learned a number of elected officials and lawmakers who are going to have political rallies over the weekend are now choosing to postpone them, trying to come up with security plans in light of just the shock and grief that has really overtaken the nation, Mugo.
Yeah, certainly. Natalie Brand, thank you. Now, former FBI agent Doug Kouns joins us live now. Doug, thank you for your time. Officials mentioned Robinson's roommate told law enforcement about messages allegedly from Robinson on Discord. How important will the suspect's online presence be in this case?
It'll be very important. So probably as we speak, search warrants are being executed on not only the physical locations where the subject lives, but also on his phone, his computer, any kind of communication devices. So they will be able to retrieve these messages and find out what discussions were being had up to this point. You know, was it something that had been being discussed for days, weeks, months leading up to it, or was this, you know, kind of not a spur of the moment decision, but was it a more recent thing? And should anybody then have said something knowing that this was potentially an imminent threat? So there could be other people with exposure still. It'll be interesting to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, and the governor of Utah, Spencer Cox, he talked about the inscriptions on the shell casings found during the investigation. Let's take a listen to what he had to say. Okay, looks like we're having trouble getting that soundbite from the governor. But I just want to ask you, when it comes to that inscription, what exactly does that say to you? How will that be used during this investigation, that information?
As an investigator, I would assume initially that those words had relevance to this individual, and I need to figure out what that was. So in these searches, both of the physical locations and of the electronics, likely we'll find, you know, he ran across these in a book or on an online article or something that had meaning to him that was enough for him to inscribe them on these shell casings. That'll be a big piece of evidence when it comes to the prosecution as well.
Okay, and it looks like we do have that soundbite ready. Let's play it real quick for our viewers.
Investigators noted inscriptions that had been engraved on casings found with the rifle. Inscriptions on a fired casing read, "Notices, bulges, capital OWO, what's this, question mark." Inscriptions on the 3 unfired casings read, "Hey fascist, exclamation point, catch, exclamation point." Up arrow symbol, right arrow and symbol, and 3 down arrow symbols. A second unfired casing read, "Oh Bella Chow, Bella Chow, Bella Chow, Chow Chow." And a third unfired casing read, "If you read this, you are gay, LMAO."
All right, Doug. So again, we heard from officials earlier today during that news conference. They talked about all the tips that they received, but then they also said that they were not looking for additional suspects in this case. But I assume there's a mountain of evidence that they're still sifting through right now. So from your experience, what comes next in this investigation?
Like you said, there's still a lot to do. They've got to get the search warrants executed and all that evidence collected. It's got to be analyzed and processed, and basically putting together hopefully an airtight case that can be prosecuted if they're seeking the death penalty. That's a big deal. You've got to have all your ducks in a row before you venture into such a thing. And I don't know if he's, you know, if he's cooperating, if he's given a statement, or if he's gotten an attorney already. Certainly a confession is very helpful in these things. The parents, you know, that encouraged him, you know, at what point did they know, and good for them for getting him to turn himself in. And going back to one of the previous speakers, you know, I think it was just a matter of time, even without the help from the father and the roommate. I think those pictures were very clear. I think somebody knew him. I think the tips that were coming in, at least some of them, people had to have known who this person was. I think it was a matter of a short time before he was going to be caught anyway.
And this is obviously a very well-known case. It's a big case. From the moment this happened, everyone was paying attention. How difficult, though, is an investigation like this for the FBI?
They're very difficult. Again, what was it, like 11,000 tips came in, and so there's a process, and people take these calls or from the internet or however they come in, and they get filtered, and then they go to another level if they have some sort of legitimacy to them. Some of them are just nonsense. And then they get filtered again, and ultimately, if they're determined important enough, they'll send out an investigator to talk to that person or check out whatever that tip may have been. And when there's that many, and you have fairly limited resources, that means you're bringing in, typically in the FBI case of this magnitude, you would bring in other investigators from other field offices. You're also leveraging your relationships with the state and local agencies. And it's basically all hands on deck covering these tips, because there's just a massive amount, and you have to cover them all. Forget where I was going exactly with that, but it's just a massive amount of work. You've also got all the video footage. There's hundreds of hours of this stuff that has to be viewed by a human being. There are some AI tools that help, but a lot of times it just takes a lot of hours of hard work and sifting through all this stuff to collect all these things.
Yeah. Former FBI agent Doug Kouns, thank you so much for your insight today. We appreciate your expertise.